Podcast 411, Item 22B, a remastering of our interview with Todd Cochrane.
Podcast411.com. Listen different.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Rob, and this is the Podcast 411 podcast. Today's episode is a remaster of an interview I did with my friend Todd Cochrane. We did this interview in early March of 2005. It was one of the first 25 interviews I did, and the audio quality was so bad I pulled down, actually the first 30 interviews I did, I pulled the audio down it's how long it took me to figure things out back then. And the interview has not been up in over probably 19, maybe 20 years. I reran the initial interview of the file I can find from our internet archive through Adobe cleanup to sweeten the sound as best I could. Trust me, it was a lot worse than this when it originally aired. Here we go.
We're going to go ahead and get into the interview with Todd from Geek News Central podcast. Here we go.
First off, Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And I'll start with my traditional first question, which is, what was your first computer?
Oh my gosh, my first computer. That would have been back. I was probably 15 or 16. My mom was at her garage sale and picks up an original TRS-80, one that had obviously no hard drive, no disc. Everything was loaded onto a cassette tape and an audio interface. And if you wanted to save anything, it went to a cassette deck. So that was my first computer, and I learned BASIC on it. It was a lot of fun.
Now, I noticed that one email you mentioned about BBSs, and one of the questions I always like to ask is, what was the first BBS you visited?
It was I believe, I remember correctly, I think it was a WWIV BBS, and it was, I was living in California at the time. I connected I have a 1200 baud modem at the time. I think I did. I had a 300 or 1200 baud modem. Matter of fact, I know it was a 1200 baud modem I paid $265 for. And as a matter of fact, I use it, I bet it on my bookshelf here. I use it as a bookend right now to remind me of how far we've come. But yeah, WWIV was the first BBS I logged into.
Okay. I want to check out the documentary you mentioned for BBSs. Back in the early 80s, I used to go to Pirates Cove. That was the first BBS I went to. It's kind of funny because I said to people, podcasting and video logging right now remind me of the day of the BBS.
I think it's what excited me about podcasting. I mean, not necessarily, I don't know, I got some history that I kind of go into sometimes, but the BBS era was, man, we all had fun, we shared, we did all kinds of stuff together. The community was pretty open. Sure, there was infighting and flaming at times, but it came with the territory. But I think now we're at the point where, web blogs were kind of like that for a while. Now, the people that are doing audio for a long time, but I don't know if it's attracted. Maybe it has. I don't know. Maybe it's just attracting a different group of people. I might be wrong with that, but I think it.
Yeah, I see this debate out there. Oh, well, we've been doing audio files, and this podcasting is just a cliche name, and no, I really think it's not a cliche name. I think podcasting is a different medium per se in how the information is delivered.
That's the whole point. It's in the delivery method, definitely.
It's so easy. Combine the delivery method with the ubiquitous nature now of the iPod or other MP3 players, and you have an entire new way for people to listen to information.
And, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and she has an MP3 player, and I was saying, just doing a kind of informal survey with her. I said, what are you and your friends doing with music? Are you guys sharing music? Are you sneaker netting it back and forth between each other? Are you listening to mashups? What are you listening to radio? And she kind of thought about that. So I don't know. I know what I do, and I'll ask my friends. And she kind of did an informal survey, and it didn't surprise me that she basically said, the majority of us are not listening to radio. The majority of us are sharing music with our friends, which, you've got to expect. And that's, that our IAA hate that, but, that's happening. And, and they're sharing mashups, and they're finding sites like webj.org, those types of sites, and downloading playlists, and I was kind of surprised. I'm pretty sophisticated for a 14-year-old to be telling me this, but I can understand why the radio people are probably tapping their toes nervously.
As near as I can tell, you started podcasting back in the October timeframe?
I believe it was actually November. I'd have to go back and look exactly, but I think it was the first week of November. And I basically got turned on to it just like everyone else did by, reading someone else's weblog and hearing about it and checked a couple of podcasts out. Said, oh man, this is cool. And immediately jumped in with both feet.
What was the first podcast you listened to?
It was probably one of Adam Curry's. I'm sure that was one of the first that I listened to.
What podcasts are you listening to now on a regular basis?
I've been supporting, of course, all the guys that I'm working with in the tech podcast groups. I've been listening to most of their podcasts. And what I'm actually doing now is I'm loading up my iPods with, I probably got 100 feeds I'm subscribed to right now, and I'm basically checking out different people's shows. I have an ulterior motive for doing that, but I'm checking out other people's shows to find out, who's sounding good, and I'm trying to form some relationships with those people that I like the content that they have. But on a daily basis, I definitely listen to Kevin Devin. Got the Tech Chat, or let's see, his IT Conversations, I believe is Kevin's show.
Okay.
And then I listen to Adrian Bacon. He has a Linux show. Who else do I listen to? Mostly tech guys. I'm a techie kind of guy. Now I do listen, maybe to a few 4 or 5 minutes of the Don and Drew show once in a while. I don't listen to them on a regular basis, but maybe once a week I'll check out something that they're doing, and it's just kind of almost like a radio dial. I skip around quite a bit, listen to different people. I listen to The Point. That is one I really, really like. I listen to his show religiously. His name's Paul Fagani, and there's a great Apple show. And for those of you for the podcasters out there having audio issues and concerns, he's the one you want to listen to. He gives a lot of great tips out. And of course, he runs a podcastrigs.com website that kind of lays out ideas for new podcasters if they want to improve their sound and invest some money in their podcast.
That's a site that if you go to it, and you get real jealous when you start looking at the $2,500 rig that he shows.
It's amazing, though, the amount of money that you can spend. I basically have made a commitment to this, to doing my show on a long-term basis. I did go ahead and invest in some equipment. I didn't spend $2,500. I bought a nice mixer with some features. I bought a nice Mackie mixer, and then I bought a good compressor / a gate, and I also bought a RO exciter. I think all grand total I have, well, with microphones, probably around $1,000 invested, but maybe a little more than that. But again, I did my first show with a lab tech headset and my computer. I really didn't need any more than that, to be honest with you.
What are you doing for the recording end of it? What's the actual device you're putting the media onto when you do recording?
It's kind of evolved. Initially, I only did it on the PC, and I learned real quickly that computers can be ornery at some times, and if I lost my second show, I actually went and bought a little iRiver. It's an IFP 790. I think it's just one of the same units Adam's using. And basically, I did a backup to that device. And then when I decided to buy a Mac Mini to learn more about the Mac product line, I had been actually swapping back and forth. I record a show on the Windows-based PC, one show. On the next show, I do it on the Mac, and I use each computer as a backup. Now, I'm fortunate that I have two PCs. Not everybody has that, but for someone that wants to do a backup of their show, that iRiver worked great. You just have to play with the audio input level a little bit, but I kind of found that both the PC and the Apple are nearly nearly identical for recording shows. I do know that the Apple, I have to crank up the input levels a little bit more on it than I do the Windows, but it's just a matter of getting the audio level set right.
Okay. Now, tell our listeners about the format and content of your podcast.
The format of the Geek News Central podcast is basically, it follows a similar format of the actual website. I use my RS aggregator, and I go through and read 100 different sites, or review 100 different sites, and I pick out news items of interest that I am capable of talking to, and I basically find 10 to 15 articles per show that I want to discuss, and it's actual subject in the news that week or within the last 2 or 3 days. And I typically start off the show, and probably for the first 10 minutes of the show, I have kind of what I call my administrative time. I talk about what's been going on, anything that's going on in the podcasting realm, general topics. The final 30 to 35 minutes of the show is talking about those news items that I have found that interest me, and I figure will interest my listeners. And typically the show runs about 45 minutes, and I only do 2 shows a week. I do sorts published Tuesdays and Fridays, and available by 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm lucky that I'm here in Hawaii because I actually record the show Monday evenings and Thursday evenings, and by the time I get it uploaded to the server and everything, if people have their podcatchers on or their podcast aggregators on, by 5 a.m. it's being pulled down and it'll be, synced up to their iPod or whatever media player they're using.
What can your listeners look forward to, in future podcasts? Is there anything new that you plan on adding to your show that you aren't doing?
There is. It's probably a couple of months out. I have a couple of projects that I'm working on right now that I'm not able to really discuss a lot about. But there's going to be some segments added in the near future, probably within the next 60 days. And I do have a couple of conferences I'm going to be speaking at, so I'm going to be covering that info. And I'm also going to be organizing the Podshaft Awards for this year, where we've got the 2005 Podcast Awards website, which is going to tick off June 15th. I have already removed myself from any running in that contest, and we're going to have a bunch of independent people come in and set the category, then do the analysis, and it's going to be similar to the bloggy, so that'll probably be incorporated into the show during that time frame. But it's going to be a fun year, and of course I've got a couple of small ventures that I'm working on also to try to, for those podcasters that want to see some sort of a return on their work in the future, if we can figure out, and a lot of people are just doing this for fun, and I'm all about having fun. I'm going to continue to have fun no matter what, but there are some podcasters out there that are interested in seeing if there's a way to make money with this, and I'm not against making money on, but we're going to explore that a little bit.
You just don't want to do it the way Mr. Tony Marino, PhD, approached the subject.
Oh, absolutely not.
I sent him an email. I said, Tony, drop your PhD from your name.
One thing that I've always said is, no matter what, we have to make sure that the listeners come first. We don't want to aggravate them. We don't want to, they are our base, and we have to keep them in mind first and foremost in anything we do. So that has to be put into play.
Tell our listeners where to locate your podcast and website.
You can find the Geek News Central podcast at www.geeknewscentral.com. And you'll find the podcast intermixed with the content. But if you want it's the site only with the podcasts, you'll look on the right-hand corner of this page, and there'll be a link that says podcast. Click on that, and you'll find the link. There is RSS feeds for either MP3, WMA, OGG, or even BitTorrent feeds. So BitTorrent feeds MP3. So you have 4 choices of feeds, depending on what type of media player you're using, or I know a lot of Linux guys are downloading the OGG file, so where you can find a show.
Now, which format do you get downloaded the most?
90% is definitely MP3, and then the other two equal about 5% each.
Okay. Because someone asked me about that. They had both as MP3 and WMA, and they said they weren't seeing any downloads on the WMA. Almost none, and they're thinking of just not even doing it anymore.
I had considered dropping both the WMA and OGG, but the numbers have slowly crept up, and I think it does add some production time to my, at the end of the show, because I'm encoding, and the OGG takes the longest to encode for some reason. The WMA codes as fast as the MP3 does, but it takes 4 times as long to encode the OGG as it does the WMA. My goal because I have a family and, got to do the dad thing, and typically I don't get into the office until about 9 p.m. I do about an hour of research on the aggregator to find my content. By 10 o'clock, I want to be recording. 10:45, I'm usually finished, and my goal is to be done by 11:30, so I do no editing. That's one of the reasons why I invested in some equipment to make sure my sound was exactly right, drawn to the hard drive, live to hard drive, no editing, immediately encode, upload, put my show notes up, and I'm done. So at maximum, usually, if everything goes right, I am done by 11:30, so 9 to 10, about 2.5 hours typically for a show.
What advice would you like to offer to those that are starting a podcast today?
The best advice I can give to people is develop a format. We're creatures of habit. People like to have a show that is formatted. Adam moves his format up quite a bit, changes it up. It's okay to change, but do changes incrementally. I truly believe people will, if they know what segment they like to listen to, if they don't like the first 3 or 4 minutes, and if you base your formatting the same every time, you'll build more listenership because they can reliably say, okay, I'm going to skip the first 2 minutes of this because I know he gets to the meat of what I want to listen to at the 3-minute mark or whatever it may be. But I truly, some people contest this, but I think my key to success so far has been having the format the same.
Well, Todd, thank you for being on the show.
Well, folks, that concludes our interview with Todd from the Geek News Central podcast. Todd, I'd like to thank you again for being on the show. That interview, again, is from March of 2005, and that started a 20-plus year relationship with my friend Todd Cochrane, who I very much already miss. And, Todd has done so much for this space. I don't know anyone that was more passionate, more committed to podcasting than Todd. Everything he did to help the space, from one of being the first people to bring in advertising, the first person to write a book on the podcast space, to his help and leadership in driving forward for us to have the IAB committee, because he knew how important it was to get the IAB behind and validating podcast metrics and how much that would open up advertising and revenue for podcasters so they could make a living at this. To all the trade shows that Todd went to, that we went to together, to help spread the word, the panels we sat on at NAB, to our very first meeting with Rob Greenlee and John Wall, when we were the 4 guys at Gnomedex that were representing podcasting, the FNGs, as we were called then, to being together at the first podcast movement, at Blog World, at New Media Expo. I used to joke I saw Todd a lot more than I saw my boss Laurie, because I would see Todd 4, 5, 6, 10 times a year at different events. He was always great to talk with. We would stay out way too late talking about podcasting and how we could better the space. I'm going to miss you, Todd. Thank you for your friendship.